Thank you so much for joining us, and it's a really nice segue. We've heard a lot about finance this morning, and now to hear from you, because you're on the ground, you're with the tourists, you're with the wildlife, and some of the issues that you see on a daily basis. But before we go into it, just tell us a little bit about yourself and your company.
Yes, I'm Chitral, Jayatilake, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I work for Cinnamon Hotels and Resorts at the John Keells Group, and all my life I've been there for 28 years, mostly at the airline division, but in the last decade, with my passion for nature, I crossed over to hotels and tried to develop nature-based tourism to Sri Lanka, along with other partners and champions. One of our dreams was to try and position Sri Lanka as a purely nature-based destination from otherwise being perceived as a great tourism destination with a bit of wildlife. So that's what we've been focusing in the last 10 years, and we've kind of finding a lot of headway and meeting a lot of success in that process, John.
Okay, great. So what we're seeing up here on the slides are your photographs, and so just explain some of these photos that we're seeing that are going to be revolving around during our conversation.
Yeah, I mean, Sri Lanka, to its size, just being 64,000 square kilometers, is an explosion of diversity. The natural world in this country is quite phenomenal. And the slide you just saw was Disney's production of Monkey Kingdom, which is filmed over 300 days as a complete feature film. The first attempt for us to brand Sri Lanka was just that. It began 12 years ago with Sri Lanka's leopards, and it was focused in the southeastern part of the country where Yala National Park is situated. But what you see there is a slight concern because Yala is now suffering from its own success. So that's the second problem we need to address. But thereafter, we went to focus on the elephants, and in 2008-09, afterwards, we put a lot of focus on branding Sri Lanka's whales, starting with blue, and to what you're seeing now is the sperm whales. And that really focused a lot of world attention and the pure safari goers to Sri Lanka.
So, quite obviously, one of the key issues facing tourism in Sri Lanka must be the desire for the economy to grow through tourism. So we're growing from 1.8 million tourists in Sri Lanka to hopefully 5 million, which seems very likable, possible over the next 5 years.
Yes.
But that's going to put huge constraints on what you're doing. And you saw these pictures here showing the traffic and all the jeeps looking at these leopards. Big issue.
Yeah, actually, it is a serious issue, but I would say it's a good issue to have, which needs urgent addressing. Because when we started this 10 years ago, there was hardly any traffic in any of these premier national parks. But today, I would say there are 3 locations which have become so popular in the world for leopards, elephants, and then comes the whales in the south, where sometimes vehicular traffic and too many whale-watching boats can create a problem for the animals' well-being as well as the tourists' experience. So those are I clearly see a triangle of flashpoints which needs urgent addressing. But as you say, when numbers keep growing, with the present 1.5 to 1.8 million, we now have about roughly 10 to 12% of all arrivals visiting premier national parks. But if it doubles in the next 3 years, we will have concerns, and that is why I feel it is opportune time now for the public and the private sector to join hands and bring in controls so that we have a very sustainable experience to offer.
Because it's not just the customer experience, because you don't want people going back to their home countries and saying it was like a zoo. They need to experience the authenticity of this country. But what about the animals as well? Because I would imagine if you're sending too many buses and jeeps out to look at these animals, they're going to continue to hide, and it's going to be more difficult to find them as well.
Yeah, actually the problem, Jonathan, affects both the animals and the visitor. Let's look at the animals' welfare first. The animals does get disturbed, and when there are 25 jeeps racing in to see a leopard at Yala, you're seriously disturbing the animal. But I always tell my colleagues in the industry that even a single jeep watching a leopard does create some kind of disturbance. But that's sustainable, that's acceptable. But on the other hand, when you disturb the animal, a leopard, let's say an Yala, will just walk out and just walk away 20 meters and find its peace. Because you are seeing a leopard only on the road and maybe a maximum of 10 meters from the road, other than in an open plain. So what we are invariably doing is we are losing a great sighting, which could have been enjoyed by many, instantly by irrational or irresponsible behavior. So you are creating a disturbance to the animal, which is not fair. But equally, it is unfair by all those who have come to Sri Lanka to see a leopard and have an experience. You're losing that moment for all these tourists.
So countries that are doing it well in terms of protecting their wildlife?
Well, India has improved so much in the last decade. I do work in India conducting my photographic tours, and I've seen how they are controlling the traffic by zoning the parks and limiting the number of vehicles in a particular zone at any given time. That's a fantastic way, and I think I've now heard that the present minister and his advisors are looking at a model of zoning some of our parks which are facing some kind of congestion. Certain African countries are running it immaculately. I could look at places like Botswana, where their experience is conducted and managed almost like a military exercise. It is so precision, and the people are always wowed, even after paying $1,000 a night. I personally feel that I've spent 35 years photographing leopards in Yala, and I clearly feel that Yala can be a mini Botswana experience if we manage the traffic and enhance the experience for the visitor.
Well, certainly I took my team up after our conference in Kilimanjaro in Rwanda in October, and we went up to see the gorillas. And it was military in terms of you were there for an hour and that was it. And you were out after seeing the gorillas, the family. And they weren't seen again until maybe the next day. It could be, a few days after. So they seem to have a good grip on it, and the numbers are coming back as well. So quite obviously, tourism protects these animals. But at the end of the day, do you ring fence the animals or do you ring fence the people?
Well, it depends on the species in question. Now, in Sri Lanka, we do have a raging conflict with human and elephants. It is the largest conflict with man and animals in the country. It is called the HNE, or human-elephant conflict. Sadly, annually, we are losing close to 60 to 70 human lives, plus close to 200 or sometimes 215 elephants are lost in this conflict. So it has gone to a point of almost uncontrollable levels. Successive governments have done their best, but we need to do more. Other animals such
but
as...
it's not, the poaching isn't an issue, is it?
Poaching is not really affecting the population numbers by any chance in Sri Lanka yet, and we are very fortunate.
Are they declining, or...?
The elephants are still very stable. In the last census done by the Department of Wildlife, we felt the numbers were in excess of 5,500 elephants in the wild. And as I said, in a country this small with 20 million people, and to have 5,000 elephants in the wild is almost, it defies all logic. So it is a magical country which needs a lot more attention.
Right. But going back to my question about ring fencing, does it work to ring fence the elephants, or is it better to ring fence the people?
Jonathan, traditionally, the Department of Wildlife began doing elephant drives to drive away elephants from traditional areas into national parks and fencing that park in. But they realized, and all the scientists in the country advised them strongly, that that doesn't work because there is a carrying capacity in those parks anyway, and you double the numbers and you have more problems to face in the future. But thereafter, they started ring fencing or electric fencing elephant areas. It is also failing. Amazingly, this country has over 1,600 kilometers of electric fences to protect and help reduce or mitigate the human-elephant conflict. But nowadays, the recommendation, and they're trying to do this in the future, is to fence villages and, when necessary, remove high conflict areas and village settlements from such areas and give them safe places to live in. For that, there is a lot of radio satellite tracking which is taking place, and the results that will come in will help the government to see a better picture.
Right. So what are the key issues then with protecting this wildlife and allowing the tourists to see it in their natural life. Is it about increasing the premium prices in terms of seeing these animals? Because for most of us in the West, this is a complete luxury. I mean, seeing the gorillas in Rwanda, we saved up for a long time before we could do that. It's expensive, and you treat it that way. Is it treated that way here?
Yes and no. I think entry into a premier national park for a foreign visitor is about 1/3 the cost one would pay in Kenya. So it can be increased to some extent and try to regulate numbers by that's probably not going to work very well, but it might have some positive effect. But the entrance fees for locals is almost free at the moment. We are looking at something like about half a US dollar per entry for a local. And being a local, I seriously feel that I should be paying at least $5 US to go and see a great experience in a premier national park because the experience is worth it. Those are things where the public sector needs to put a lot of focus in. But to me, it's all about carrying capacity in anything we do. Every park, every population of animals has a limit it can tolerate, and that limit has to be identified and respected and accepted both by the public sector and by the private sector, where we promote this tourism. And once you understand and realize that there is a carrying capacity and you start respecting it, it's very easy from that point onwards to bring restrictions.
Right. So what's your, how do you do this? You've got these issues, challenges in terms of tourism. What is it that needs to happen in this country in order to protect the wildlife?
I think we are on a very steep development curve. After years of conflict, we now happen to live in one of the most peaceful countries in the world. We are honestly blessed to have that privilege. But in this phase, I think a lot of companies, such as ours, there are local companies and foreign chains which are coming in terms of tourism investment, are doing some great work. But I would actually like to see them all joining hands and becoming one voice. And that one body or that one voice must then reach out and join hands with the public sector. Because no conservation or implementation of a process can be done in this country according to the law without total participation of the public sector. So we need to first become one voice and then extend our hand and build a bridge between the public and the private sector. And the moment we do that, everything else will start to fall into place.
Right, so there needs to be a little bit of leadership from the private sector?
It has to.
Is there anybody that is taking the lead on that? Is that something you can do? Can you take the lead?
I think at John Keells Group, we are in a position to take that leadership, but we're very happy to share it with other responsible companies in the country, and there are many competitor but friendly companies we have close links with. And I would honestly like to team up with all the investors here, and those are the other investors who have already stepped into the country and operating, because the more we have in numbers, the better. Because conservation itself needs to pay for itself in today's world. No government is going to extend unlimited funds for conservation, and tourism can help. And good and responsible wildlife tourism will only protect this USP.
So this is primarily a private audience here. I would suspect everybody in this room would support you, because they know this is their bread and butter. This is the golden goose, isn't it? So I can't see why everybody in this room wouldn't support you and your initiative to have a private sector body that can represent this space and canvass the government.
I too are very confident of that, because I think this is a fantastic USP. Because if you are investing in this country as a hotelier, there's so much this country offers in terms of its culture, its people, its food, its beaches, and its scenery. But a huge pillar of our attraction should be its wildlife. And I'm still trying to argue, even with some local operators, that you guys are not paying enough attention to use our natural world as one of the main pillars to promote this country.
Can you just put up your hands if you'd be willing to support Chitral in his objectives? Yeah?
I'm on it.
Okay, so you've got everybody here putting up their hands, willing to support you. So we'll help you do that as well.
I
we'll
look
reach
forward
out
to
to
that.
our audience to make sure they follow up on this.
Oh, I totally look forward to that. Sacha there has my contact numbers, and I think more the better, so that we can join hands and hopefully ensure that what we have so much in the wilds will remain, so that our children and their children will also have a chance of enjoying this. But whilst doing that, the attraction will also help in our businesses to kind of position Sri Lanka for a very sustainable experience for people to go back with unforgettable memories.
Okay. So just to summarize then, because I see our time is up, would you say your glass is half full or glass empty? Half empty.
I think it's kind of half empty now. I have a lot of hope. We are a country and a nation that kind of picks ourselves up from very difficult positions and move forward without even leaving a trace of what happened. The tsunami of 2004 is one, where 1 year after that, the entire southern railway line, which was completely destroyed, was operational, and you wouldn't even know where the tsunami struck. So we have that resilience, and this is a good problem, as I said in the beginning, but it needs some serious focus on certain flashpoints, and it's just a matter of time, and sooner we join hands and work with the government, I believe there is a lot of hope to get the model right.
Okay. Well, we're going to be back here next year, so we'll definitely be following up and working with you on this, because this is something that's key for the tourism industry in Sri Lanka.
I look forward to that, John.
Okay. So please show your appreciation to Chitral. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Come here.